All those learning loops things, all those assessment pro formas, which are on pages 20 to 26, don't involve grading for the most part, although there is one that has grades on it, because I've stole it from someone and I just left the grade on. I wouldn't use it, the maths one. It's got a grade on there. I'd be inclined to use it without that. But anyway, they tend not to use grading. And this has been found to be a massively powerful strategy. I'd like to explain why. It seems odd, especially when students come from schools and they expect to be graded, leveled, you know, what level I'm at. I'd like to explain an experiment that was done by Ruth Butler, seminal experiment, which everybody was so surprised at that it was repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. We still get the same, you know, the same results were found every time. Also, what happens here fits in exactly with the psychological theories about the way students learn. So we're pretty emphatic about this, even though the finding is puzzling. And difficult, actually, for many of us as teachers when we're working with some examining bodies who are less than helpful in this respect. The argument is we shouldn't grade students that often, just occasionally grade them, give them percent, a mark, or some other comparison with another student, or with a national standard. Most of the time, medals and missions. What have I gone right? How do I get better? Never mind where you are exactly on the slope. Students do need to know where they are on the slope. It's only fair from the point of view of career management and so on. Obviously, you know, it would be dreadful, wouldn't it, if we gave medals and missions all the way through a 2-year course, and at the end we said, oh, by the way, you failed. You know, that's not on. They need to know where they are. You look like you might get a D. If you look like you might get a pass. It looks like you're going to make 27%. It looks like you're going to pass or not. That sort of thing needs. But how often? How often is the question? Formative assessment isn't about measuring. Formative assessment is about improving. Yeah. The Chinese were ahead of us by 2,000 years when they said, "You can't fatten a pig by weighing it." Yeah, you can't fatten a pig by weighing it. The whole idea of formative assessment is to improve the pig, yeah, not to weigh it. And Black and William are emphatic that we spend a great deal of time weighing our pigs. There's a pass pig and a merit pig and an A pig and a B pig and a 27% pig and a 47% pig. But what we're not doing is saying, at the moment, you'd be a fatter pig if you did this. Which is what, and by the way, you got this fat, you're doing this okay. That's what they need. Anyway, let's just, without further ado, let's have a look at Ruth Butler's very famous experiment. She did a mock teaching thing where she gave students a task, gave them some feedback, another task, some more feedback. This is, by the way, is on page 27 in your pack, 27. A third task and third feedback. She was interested in two things. Did the students, this is a very, very carefully set up experiment with control group and experimental groups, and it's been repeated many times, and we always get the same outcome. So, what she did was, she was interested in two things. Which students learn most? Which one maintain interest? In terms of the different sorts of feedback I'm going to give these students. And the three types of feedback she gave them were, a third of the students got comments only. Okay, so what was good about this piece of work, how to improve? Medal and mission, really, yeah. The second third were given grades only. And the third lot, I have to admit, I thought these lot were going to do best, but it didn't turn out to be the case, were given grades and comments, yeah. And she was interested, was their interest maintained? Did they learn more than, which third did best in terms of learning quality? And she found that the comments-only group, the performance improved by 33%. So when students were just told what to do to improve, what they'd done well, they got a lot better. If there was grading, their performance declined, actually, when they were graded. But her research was only done on the top quarter and the bottom quarter of the ability range in these very large classes, by the way, but the top quarter and bottom quarter. I suspect very, very strongly that because the middle quarters aren't affected so much. Now, a lot of people would understand why it is that if you grade a student, whether there's comments or not, and you give them a low grade repeatedly, that they might start to try less hard and do less well. What's the problem here? What's the problem when we grade a weak student and they're getting a low grade repeatedly? What's their reaction? Yeah, they're going to think, hey, I'm no bloody good at this. I can't do this, I tried really hard just now, and I only got a bare pass, I'm no good at this. Well, what do we do when we're no good at something, We tend to stop, don't we? I mean, how many one-legged mountaineers are there? There are not many, really. If we find something really, really hard, some of us are very brave and don't, but many of us just think, I think I'll do something else, actually. I've had 3 goes at this, and I'm clearly crap. Give me something else to do. Less obvious, what happens to the top? Why is it the top quartile, the most able quarter, why is their performance diminished? Just give you a moment in pairs. Why do the most able students find their learning is diminished when they're graded? And they're given good grades. They're given good, encouraging grades. May I stop you there? Again. Who'd like to, if you wouldn't mind putting your hand up, then Julie will be able to find you and we'll hear some comments. Why is it that the more able quartile are also, that their learning is reduced, in fact? Their performance is reduced by the grading process. And I'm about to make a wild guess.
Well, I think they just tend to rest on their laurels, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Absolutely. It's complacency, really. A lot of students live very busy lives, There's discos and friends and things like that. There's a lot of tweeting to do these days, And if they think, hey, I got a distinction. If I do a bit less next time, I'll still get a merit, Or some students will say, I've got a distinction, all I need is a pass. In fact, I'm fairly happy if I don't pass, because she always lets you have another go. So next time, instead of spending an hour doing this, I'll try 20 minutes, see if that gets by. Yeah? So the trouble with grading is it produces coasters. Yeah? People who coast. People who think, I'm going to sort of adjust my level of my effort to the situation here. They're a canny lot, our students, aren't they? They're nobody's fool. And if there's a way of coasting. Now, what happens, though, when they give medal and mission feedback? They've got no idea how well they did. Yeah? So you might be giving them missions, which are virtually, 2 grades, sort of next year's work, to read up and stuff. And they don't know, so they just keep doing that. You give them a mission, they'll do it. But the grading is a real issue there. So grading degrades learning. And that's a real tough one for teachers. What the hell do we do with that information? Because we've got to grade them. Yeah? Well, the answer is we've got to grade them only occasionally. Enough for them to know where they are. Looks like you'll pass, but you're borderline, or there's a good chance you'll get the B you need to go to Newcastle University, but you better keep at it if you want that, or whatever it is. They need to know where they are, but how often? If a student's told, bare pass, I reckon, are they going to expect to be completely different in 2 weeks' time? They're not stupid. They realise if they're a bare pass, at the beginning of March, they're going to be a bare pass at the end of it, really, unless they put fantastic effort in. So they only need occasional reminders. Maybe some people say once every half term, once a term on a full-time course I'm talking here, but, you'd have to adjust, obviously, to a different situation. So what do teachers do? Sometimes they only grade when they have to. When a student does a piece of work, a homework, a piece of classwork, they never put grades on. They'll just say, what I like about this piece of work is, da-da. What you need to work on is, dee-dum, yeah? So, medal and mission, yeah? Maybe you give them an assessment criteria as well. Maybe you get them to grade their own work. Maybe they self-assess their own work. And you think, good enough. They've thought what they got right and what they got wrong. They've changed their construct. I don't need to write a note in my mark book necessarily for that. Withhold grades until the tutorial reviews. Some teachers say, half a term in, or 6 weeks in, or whatever. On a full-time course, again, I'm talking here just to contextualize. But they might say, well, you've got 2 merits and a pass, but the last 2 pieces were merits. It looks like you're improving, but you need to work on, yeah? So every now and again, the students get told how well they're doing. Most of the time, they're getting medals and missions, because that's what improves students' performance most. Difficult to do. Would Estin like it? Answer? They're perfectly happy with it. I've just talked a little about it. Perfectly happy with this. Your judgment, how often the final grading needs to be done. She doesn't, I don't know, we want to make a word now about this, or I'm misquoting you. But you're perfectly happy with the idea of maximizing learning with medal and mission feedback. Yeah, no problem at all. So there's no reason to fill your mark book with lots of little D's and M's and 75% and A's and B's and D's and C's, because you're not necessarily wanting to weigh these pigs all the time, yeah? You're trying to fatten them. And so it's the missions that you're giving students and your requirement to improve that's a really important thing. There's a few other things in the pack about that as well. Okay, I've spent quite a bit of time now talking about formative assessment. I'm going to now use a teaching method, which is probably one of the most powerful formative teaching methods there is, according to Dylan William, and he's the world's expert on it. It's called diagnostic questions. And I'm giving you 5 statements there, and I want you to tell me which ones are true and which ones are false. It's not a multi-choice questionnaire where one of them is right and all the others are wrong. Each statement could be true or false, yeah? And by the way, for the mathematicians amongst you, I think there's 64 combinations of right, wrong, that, so the chance of you getting the right, wrong things by accident, nearly 0, yeah? But I'm going to ask you to work in pairs to decide whether you agree or disagree in outline with those 5 statements, and then we'll discuss them. And this is a formative teaching method called diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic questions, very, very powerful. You could use it. But I'll just give you a minute to look at those.